Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
No shtick. I am surprised, Mark.
My tongue really hurts.
I could make a joke, but I'm not going to.
I am pushing through these podcasts. I have pushed through them through not being able to breathe, through my throat filling up with phlegm and vomiting. I have pushed through these through chemo treatments, through being half conscious, through being unconscious. I have podcasted from a hospital while receiving CAR T treatment. I'm not going to let sores on my tongue stop me, but my tongue hurts.
You have, in fact, fallen asleep on a podcast. That's true.
More than one.
Thankfully, none of them involving me, because I provide scintillating conversation.
I have debated whether or not I want to re-air the Typo Negative retrospective, because late into that show, I absolutely passed out.
Do it. We have no shame.
Here's our retrospective of Typo Negative. This is like one of my favorite bands ever. Oh my god, Black Number. Yeah. I'm debating.
I'd do it, but again, I'm me. All right, that's enough jibber-jabber from Mark and I. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the Guy Ritchie and Jason Statham collaboration, recently released into theaters. It won the weekend as a preview of our money segment. Wrath of Man. Mark, remind me how we got... normally when I do this bit, it's because I kind of go, why did you do this to me and how did we get here? But you just kind of said, hey, there's a Guy Ritchie movie starring Jason Statham. Do you want to do it? Assuming it actually keeps its release date. And I said yes because it's Guy Ritchie and Jason Statham. You know, what's not to go for there?
Well, had it not been for the pandemic, had it not been for the degree and the how... vaccinations were rolled out and how long it took to get mass vaccinations going, Disney might not have pushed back Black Widow to July 9th. It was supposed to come out May 7th. And had that been the case, Wrath of Man was originally scheduled for January 15th, but then it was pulled due to COVID-19, and then it was rescheduled for April 23rd. But when Disney pushed everything back, made Black Widow premiere access, left Cruella at May 28th, but basically was like, we're not ready to go early May, we need to go late May, June, July, which then pushed Shang-Chi to September. Then, I think this is MGM. Let me look real quick. Yeah, then MGM was like, well, fuck all y'all, and moved this from April 23rd, which is about when Mortal Kombat was supposed to come out, or did come out, I don't remember anymore, to May 7th. So, ostensibly, we are starting the summer movie season with a Guy Ritchie crime drama where Jason Statham executes people one shot, one kill, instead of Black Widow. And that's how we got here.
You know, to be fair, I imagine this is a significantly better movie than Black Widow in every possible way.
You know, you're probably right. I don't know. I mean, people are going to go see Black Widow. People are, and more people, I think, will collectively enjoy Black Widow because it's Marvel and it's a lighter fare, and people tend to enjoy that sort of thing. But, if I had to stack them against each other, all things being equal, yeah, probably Wrath of Man's going to end up being better than, the broad general audience action thriller based on a comic book character who died in the last movie, Black Widow.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know why people are going to see that movie. I know, let me be clear. I know they're going to. I know we're going to review it. I would not see it if I was not reviewing it.
I mean, I don't really want to go into a whole lengthy thing here.
No, it's fine.
I mean, well, let me just say this. People, I think after Winter Soldier is where people started clamoring for like a Black Widow movie, and
Which was fair, to be honest. I was kind of among them. I was like, hey, we've got this great character. She's appeared in a few other movies. She has a skill set that lends itself to a certainly engaging cinematic experience. Why don't we? Mm-hmm. And Kevin Feige went Fugazi.
Well, I think the effort, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the effort in earnest started after Age of Ultron because of the Black Widow flashbacks to the Red Room. And that's when people were like, Black Widow needs her own movie. Black Widow needs her own movie. And the time to have done that would have been... See, the problem was the time to have done that would have been putting the movie into development before Age of Ultron and Civil War. Unfortunately, the clamoring for a Black Widow movie didn't really start in earnest until after Age of Ultron, and by that point, because movies take a while to develop, and Marvel plans out their slates years in advance, there was just no... The Black Widow movie they created, which is in the shadow of Civil War, it's kind of an epilogue to Civil War, would have been great following Civil War within a year or two. Would it have? But it just wasn't in development. You know, it was an idea they kicked around, and they were like, well, we have other things to get to. We got to get to Ragnarok, and we got to introduce Captain Marvel, and we got to do a Black Panther movie, and we got to do Doctor Strange, and oh my God, Spider-Man's back.
For the record, Black Widow movie would have been better than at least 3 of the things you just mentioned.
Granted. My point being that I think, you know, the Black Widow movie, I think is partially, well, we don't have a lot coming out of the gate with, as far as known characters. I mean, when you look at the slate of movies coming up, I mean, Shang-Chi clicks a box, but is Shang-Chi even in the top 20 popular Marvel characters? I'll answer that for you. He is not.
The Eternals are even less popular than... I mean, look, I kind of joke about this on occasion with you. And I promise we'll get to the actual movie in a second. The Eternals are a bad joke. Like, even people who read a lot of comics know that they suck. They're a cheap excuse they're a cheap Deus Ex Machina that gets brought out for retcons whenever the writing staff feels the need for one.
Aren't they also a ripoff of DC's New Gods?
Yeah, which Kirby created for DC. Then he came to Marvel and essentially ripped off his own ideas and created the Eternals, and they're much worse.
Yeah. So, if you think about... And again, I am speaking kind of as a Marvel defender here, so don't beat me up.
You want to be the defender. You're gonna stand in front of that property with the shield and go, I can do this all day. Well, I'm gonna put that to the test.
What I mean is, I know what they're thinking. I know. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, we have less than popular characters whose movies we're developing. It's in the shadow of our greatest success. So we have a lot of goodwill, but we don't have a lot in the pipeline. And what we do have in the pipeline of known characters are lesser known characters, and it's all going to Disney Plus. Scarlet Witch, Vision, Falcon, Winter Soldier, Hawkeye. Okay? And Loki. So it's like, what do we do to kind of kick things off with a known character that people like, they want to see a movie for, and is something comfortable that people will enjoy and like and want? And that's Black Widow. It served all those needs. It clicks all those boxes. It's a bizarre choice in that timeline-wise, it's like, well, what does this serve in terms of functionality? But on the other hand, it's a lot of fan service. You get Red Guardian, you get the Yellow Bologna character, who's also a Black Widow. There's allusions to the Winter Guard.
Yelena Belova, you
sure.
heathen. That's all that movie is a backdoor pilot to introduce Yelena Belova to the MCU when she would have been so much better served in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Cut out Emily Van Camp because she sucks and Sharon Carter's worse. Mm-hmm. And throw in the Russian spy in your spy story. But hey, I'm only a thinking person.
Well, she's going to be in Hawkeye, so you're kind of going to get your way anyway.
No, I care much less about her appearance in Hawkeye.
My point being, just to wrap this up, Black Widow was intended to be like, hey, I know we have a bunch of shit you're not familiar with or don't care about coming up, but Black Widow, we like her, right? Yeah, okay, so here comes that goodwill. And then the pandemic hit. And everything got delayed, a year or two, and now it's July 9th.
Up.
The order never got screwed up.
No, the order is completely screwed up.
The original layout was always supposed to be Black Widow and... Well, it was supposed to be Black Widow and Eternals. I don't think Shang-Chi was in the middle of that. I think...
There's that. Doctor Strange was supposed to come out much closer to WandaVision.
Oh, that's what you mean by the order. I'm like, because the order of the films is still relatively intact.
Again, they've swapped a few of them around, but a lot of a lot of whatever grand overarching narrative they had planned is kind of screwed.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We were supposed to get Falcon and Winter Soldier in August of last year. That didn't happen. It was supposed to be WandaVision in December, and then Doctor Strange in February. That obviously didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
And by that point, Spider-Man would have already come out as well. So anyway, we're not talking about Black Widow because it got moved, and it gave Miramax the opportunity to release Wrath of Man, and that's what we're here to discuss.
So, Wrath of Man is the story presents itself in a very non-linear fashion. We're introduced first to a character by the name of Patrick Hill, played by our protagonist, Jason Statham, who gets hired on by an armored truck company. One of the trucks he's guarding, we meet the whole cast of characters that are the people who work for this company. It's Fortico, which is, again, an armored truck company that moves money. One of the trucks he's on is, they attempt to rob it. He violently murders all of the robbers. Like you do. Then we kind of get some flashback stuff to him and a few of the other characters. Turns out our friend here, our primary character, he's nicknamed H, is in fact a very prominent crime boss in the city of Los Angeles. And his son was killed and he was shot up in a just really unfortunate, literally just wrong place, wrong time, as an armored car was robbed. In fact, that's our opening sequence, is this armored truck robbery. And we get a little bit of a flashback to his violent quest for vengeance as he tears through parts of the Los Angeles underworld looking to find who killed his son. And he can't find them, and he can't find them, and he can't find them, and he kills a lot of people. Most of them deserve it. And eventually one of his underlings, one of his subordinates, tells him, "Look, boss, we can't keep doing business like this. It's just not good. And besides, that whole thing had to be an inside job. Otherwise, we would have found something." So he fabricates an identity, goes undercover as a guard for this armored truck company, and starts trying to root out who was the inside man and who, again, committed these crimes. It was a former army unit with another group of characters who, in the wake of their service and trying to reintegrate into society and struggling to do so for a variety of reasons, took to robbing, took to the thievery skills, and again, it was just kind of bad luck what happened. But this group is planning a much larger heist. They actually want to hit the armored car depot on Black Friday. So they plan that. Again, our group of characters there plans that. Goes to execute it. It turns out their inside man is the older partner. He's like a shift manager or something, who's kind of been working with Jason Statham, teaching him to the extent that you're going to teach that guy. So this is not a funny Guy Ritchie movie, but there's some comedy here. The older guy kind of showing him the ropes. He was also served with the sergeant of this group, played by Jeffrey Donovan. So they try to execute this heist for $150+ million. Things go sideways. There's a great gunfight sequence. Eventually, a bunch of our robbers are killed, but not the one that shot both Jason Statham and his son, played by Scott Eastwood. He and a couple of others actually escape with the money. Scott Eastwood kills the other two survivors so he can keep it all for himself. Jason Statham then tracks him down and murders him to close out his quest for revenge. A dry recitation of the plot is not going to do this movie justice, which is true of most Guy Ritchie movies. There's a lot of style that goes into it that needs to be discussed kind of separately. So anyway, Jason Statham shoots Scott Eastwood several times, and goes back to his life of crime. Again, I can't just say this happened. You'll either get drowned in the minutia of a Guy Ritchie movie trying to do that, or you wind up just not discussing some of the specific style elements that play into this that wind up just being so wonderful. So, Mark, I mentioned this to you offline. I did not get what I expected out of this movie. I kind of thought we'd get something more akin to The Gentleman, or some of the other Guy Ritchie movies that you've seen. Some fast talk, some interesting cut work, some little bit of playing around with perspective. A lot of the kind of Guy Ritchie hallmarks. If you're expecting a still violent on occasion crime story, but one that's a little bit more lighthearted, again, The Gentleman is a lot more lighter in tone. If you're expecting that, this is not it. This is much darker, much more somber, it tries to be a much more harrowing viewing experience. To its utter credit, it succeeds on all of those points. I only bring that up just so that you out there might go, Guy Ritchie movie. Again, if you've heard Mark and I review The Gentleman, which we both had very complimentary things to say about, this is very, very different. And, again, extremely enjoyable. I enjoyed everything about this movie. But I want to give you first kind of crack at this, where you want to start up, because much like me, you mentioned, you had a different expectation. You got something different, still very enjoyable, but not what you were expecting. So what was your experience like with this?
I think from a purely aesthetic viewpoint, I enjoyed Jason Statham doing Jason Statham stuff. Him one-shot executing people is probably the highlight of the movie for me. Like, casually shooting people as he walks through a room, or when he's executing all of the armored truck robbers in the beginning. And it's, they've established that in trying to create this identity, he barely passes some of the tests, like the shooting test and whatnot. But then when that one group of nondescript guys robs the armory truck, suddenly he's able to execute these guys bullet to the head, one shot, one kill. And it's like, what Guy Ritchie is every bit of film director as you would want him to be. Like, there are some directors that they know the mechanics of how to film a movie, but they're not necessarily artists. Like we're talking about, like a Brett Ratner, who will functionally put your movie together, but he has no artistic vision.
Well, to varying degrees of assemblage, sure.
You know what I mean?
I do. I have to kick the Ratnertron 3000 every now and then.
Fair enough. Whereas Guy Ritchie has very much an artistic palette. He has a very distinct style, and he's not doing fantasy, but his films are very visual. They are a very visual medium. There's some snappy dialogue, and there's some great acting. But you watch a Guy Ritchie movie to watch a movie, to see the way actors are blocked and directed, to see how scenes play out from a visual perspective. And that's where Wrath of Man succeeds, because it's a very simple story. It's a whodunit. Jason Statham is the father of a college aged boy who wrong place, wrong time, gets killed in the middle of an armored truck robbery. And because Jason Statham doesn't know who did it, he spends the next part of the movie having his men try to figure it out. And Los Angeles is a big place, and it's not always easy to figure out like who might have done these things. And so he takes it upon himself to say, okay, the way we've been doing this isn't going to work, and it's only going to end in tears for us if we continue to violently slaughter other crime families and upend their businesses the way he's been doing up to this point. He talked about like scorched earth, and there's some really violent stuff that happens in this movie.
Oh yes.
For some people, it might be uncomfortable. Like, I thought it was okay, but it was definitely like Guy Ritchie.
You and I sat through. I made this reference to you offline. Well, not off before we were recording. You and I sat through the 13-hour experience that was Too Old to Die Young, and I'm certainly no pansy when it comes to violence in film. A lot of stuff doesn't bother me. This movie didn't bother me, but it is most definitely. It does not shy away from. It's not gratuitous. Like there's some sequences in this movie that could have gone very much over the top, and they're shockingly understated.
It's indulgent. I wouldn't say it's overindulgent, and it's not. It's not a criticism, but it is definitely an indulgent movie. Guy Ritchie set out to make a violent crime drama, revenge crime drama, and he succeeded. And he had a really good lead in doing so because Jason Statham is an understated actor.
I love his performance here.
Yeah, like I was thinking about Hobbs and Shaw. Where is it Hobbs and Shaw, or is it one of the Fast and Furious movies, like proper
but
ones?
You
not
yourself.
Huh?
I was gonna say, but you repeat yourself.
Yeah. Where he's fighting on the plane with the baby.
That's Fast and the That's Fast 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it like.
Hang on. For the record, I said this when we reviewed that movie. Best part of that entire stupid movie is Jason Statham on the plane with that baby.
Yeah.
And there's more chemistry with that baby than any other two people have in that entire movie.
I bring it up because sometimes you need to throw a baby in the scene with Jason Statham, because I'm going to make a statement. If you disagree, you can disagree, but disagree in 5 minutes. Let me get through it. I don't want to argue about this point. I think once you've seen Jason Statham kick a guy, you've seen it. And so once you've seen it, unless you just really like to watch Jason Statham kick people, you need to do something else with him. You need to dress it up a bit. You need to zhuzh it up. And so Jason Statham kicking people with a baby is nicely zhuzhed. Here, they don't zhuzh it up at all so much, but you still get good Jason Statham stuff because the movie itself is so... I'm going to go with the word zhuzhed again. There's a lot of zhuzhing going around Jason Statham, and he's sort of this central, stoic, understated character who, when he's unleashed, he's very precise, very, like, minimal. Like, he isn't cutting off a guy's ear or anything like that. He isn't going crazy. This also isn't John Wick. These aren't, like, prolonged fight scenes between ninjas. It is... it's very, like, military precise. He is there to do a job and get it done. In the scenes where he's either, like, torturing or murdering people for information, for whatever the reasons are, it's very much like, like I said, he just kind of casually walks through a room and just shoots everybody. When he put back to the armored truck thing that I was talking about, when he kills those guys, there's not a lot of, wait, no, sir, I'm sorry. No, it's just bang. And I like that because you don't get to see that a lot in movies. In movies, typically where there's like a lot of gunplay and stuff, and fighting, it's all very dramatic, and there's a lot of dialogue. And here, it's very minimalist and straight to the point.
It's one of the things that I liked about the majority of the gunplay scenes in the Punisher series. Mm-hmm. There's a couple that are drawn out, but one, it's always obvious when they're going to happen because it's not Frank and an army versus an army of goons. It's Frank versus Billy.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that deserves, by that point, that deserves time, that deserves space, that deserves a long fight. But, you know, the army of goons that he massacres at their hiding place,
Mm-hmm.
it's all well shot and it's all interesting, but it is very efficient.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of the a lot of the stuff that's drawn out for the sake of drawing it out. And there's a lot of that here with Jason Statham.
Yeah.
He doesn't enjoy what he does, you know. He does it because it's a great line from I'm going to reference something that's going to date me horribly as a person. There's a great line from the Animorphs books about what it means to be ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
People equate ruthlessness with cruelty, and they're really not the same thing. Ruthlessness is simply seeing the shortest path from where you are to where you need to go, and being willing to do whatever it takes to follow that path. And again, sometimes that involves cruelty, but not always. And Statham is a ruthless character in this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sometimes that means he's undercover for months in this armored truck company, you know, playing nice-ish. He's still kind of a jerk. But you're playing nice-ish with all of these people and getting to know them, and that's the most efficient way for him to do that.
He was also kind of out of options. I mean, again, they turned over the Los Angeles crime scene, and you know, one of his henchmen. It's my favorite line in the movie because one of his henchmen's like, "Boss, we can't keep doing this. At some point, someone like the henchman and Andy Garcia both have the best lines of this movie. The henchman's like, we can't keep doing this. At some point, people are going to lose their patience with us, and they're going to come back. And this is just not a way to run a business. Yeah. And that's where, you know, and we're not anywhere closer to finding who killed your son. Which I want to talk about that for a second, because before I forget, because it was one of the elements of the movie I really liked. Boy, am I tired of the Hollywood trope of the revenge being set off by the loss of a wife or a girlfriend. I just fucking hate it. I'm so tired of it. And I love the fact that the impetus for his revenge spree was they killed his son instead. It's a minor detail. Maybe some people are like, what fucking difference does it make? It makes a difference because at least it's different. You know, he has this tenuous relationship with his son, you know, and he's trying. And in the midst of trying, he's robbed of his son. You know, it isn't... And I don't want to get off on a tangent, you know, re-litigating John Wick or anything. But, like, you know, the killing of the dog is symbolic of him losing the girlfriend the second time, the love of his life. And I know that plays for a lot of people, and I'm not saying it doesn't play for me too, because I do get it. It's just overused and tired, and everyone focuses on the dog, but it really is it's his loss of his most beloved.
If I may, when it comes to the dog and John Wick, and I'm with you, I don't want to go into a deep thing about this, but I think, well, part of the reason that plays so much for so many people is it's one of the cardinal rules of.
Don't kill a dog.
I forget where I heard this, so forgive me for just a second. But there was a line from it. I want to say it was a book where this it's a foreign crime syndicate. I can't remember where they're from, but they wind up like ambushing a few American, or they go do a job in America, kind of thing. And they are told explicitly by their boss, okay, you're going to America. America is not like the rest of the place. There are rules for what you do in America. Here's the rule for what happens when you... It only gave them, like, the two rules. You don't kill any kids, and don't kill any dogs. It's just one of the things you don't do. And, yeah. I mean, it's funny, but it's also kind of true. Like, we, as people, will kind of go along with, okay, you can kill, we will understand if you kill the wife, if you kill even the kid, the kid's always that's always a big one that kind of kicks things off. But you can kill the parents. You can take the family farm. There's a bunch of stuff you can do. But if you kill the dog, like that, you just don't do that.
So I like the fact that we get a little bit of just enough of his relationship with his son to feel remorse when he loses his son and understand his motivation for wanting to do what he's doing. The point that I was getting to, like a half an hour ago, was it's a very simple plot. A lot of the negative reviews have been on this thing is this is not a very deep movie, and it's not. It's a very simple movie. It's stylized. It's non-linear. It's a very visual movie. And if you're into all of that, you'll have a good time. And I was. I like the action sequences. I liked the performance. I liked the stylized, non-linear editing and set pieces of the movie. I like the idea that it's a little claustrophobic. A lot of it takes place in and around the armored trucks. But you you kind of know what happened to the son halfway through the movie, and then it's a matter of will he get away with killing all these people or not. The other problem with this is not a lot of likable characters in this, and I'm not even sure Jason Statham is all that likable. I mean, he's a horrible criminal murderer, and you sympathize with him because no one should have to bury their own child. Isn't that like right next to "Don't kill the dog" is no man should have to bury his son. Mm-hmm. But that is the only thing holding up this picture. Once you start to dig a little bit, and I think that's probably my only criticism of the movie is that it is. We often talk about a lot of movies that are just made for entertainment value. I'm struggling to see the value of this movie beyond entertainment. And believe me, I know what we're doing here, and I am not looking for an argument on, hey, motherfucker, Cruella, fucking Black Widow, What we're not talking Citizen Kane with the list of movies you're picking, and I get that, and I am not complaining or sad I saw this. I'm just saying it's not a deep movie. It doesn't ask a lot of questions. It's it was a fun movie to watch on a Friday night. Now that I'm back into the schedule of going to the movies on a Friday night by myself, which is harder now because I tend to bring my kids to a lot of things, but I wasn't going to bring my kids to Wrath of Man. And so...
why not? I'm sure your son would have he would have run screaming out of the room and did the opening.
He probably would have been fine with it. My daughter would not have loved it. Probably would have been a little too violent for her.
Well, that and, all the gay references.
Right. Okay. I don't even remember them. In any case, my kind of final...
Hold on. You seriously don't remember? One of the guys' nicknames is Boy Sweat.
I mean, now that you mention it, sure.
There's a bit where it's taking Bullet a bit long to get back from a quick drop-off, and Josh Hartnett calls him on the radio and says, unless you ran into a beautiful blue-eyed Latin boy, you should have been back here by now.
Not to reference a private conversation you and I had, but that stuff doesn't necessarily peg any buttons for me. So it's like I'm listening to it, and it's like, hey, more snappy Guy Ritchie dialogue. It's like when Quentin Tarantino does a lot of the N-word and references to black culture. Like, it doesn't hit a button for me. I enjoy it, and I'm with it when the movie does it. But I think both Guy Ritchie and Quentin Tarantino are both throwing those in there to mess with the straights. And I'm not the audience for that. That's not the thing that bothers me,
Look, it doesn't bother me in the sense that I'm either offended by it or off-put by it, but I'm a little bit more surprised you didn't at least notice it.
I mean, maybe while I was watching the movie, but, a weekend, 4 or 5 days later. I mean, I saw it Friday night. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's a Tuesday night when we're recording this. It did not stay with me.
honestly, I think at this point it more stuck with me because that's not bits of dialogue that you see in movies all that much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this, we are not getting into a debate about the merits of various sensitivities or oversensitivities or whatnot. This is not the show for that. It's just to say that, you and I, Mark, you're 10 years older than I am, but you were old enough in the 90s and 2000s to know how kids, especially school age kids, spoke a lot of the time during that period. And that language kind of bled into the popular culture, and then it bled out. Not necessarily to the detriment of a whole lot of anything, but it's a very true to life bit of how men interact that doesn't get shown a whole lot anymore, and maybe that's why it stood out to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and maybe that's why it didn't stand out to me because as I told you, and as you just pointed out, like, calling your friend gay, things like that is such I'm 40, almost 45 years old. I've been doing that probably since I was in at least junior high.
Yeah. Middle school, I hear.
Yeah. So seeing men interact that way, especially, burly, tough men, calling each other faggot, okay. It's like, again, it's like casually throwing out nigger. It's like, my nigga this, my nigga that, among people who say it. By the way, did you watch the Booker T A&E biography?
I did not. I have not been watching those. Not because I object to them, but
he actually referenced that. He dropped the N, the night that he dropped the N-word on a promo, and he was
Hulk Hogan, we coming for you.
We coming for you, nigga. Like, oh.
That bit that lives in infamy. I love.
They left out the Vince McMahon one though. When Vince McMahon walked past him, yeah,
because he says it to John Cena.
And Booker T's like, tell me he didn't just say that. Yeah, none of that's in there
because he's Vince. That was Vince McMahon in the early 2000s.
Yeah. So my point is whether and for people who are like, oh! that I said those things, whether you're calling people the F word or you're calling people the N word, and and it's casual amongst friends and not in the racist or bigoted spirited, but more in the this is how we talk to this is how my friends and I talk to each other way. That's how I've grown up. That's how I've always been. And so hearing it in a movie doesn't, it didn't seem out of the ordinary for me. Same thing, like I said, with a Quentin Tarantino movie. Anyway,
again, my only point there is it doesn't stand out of the ordinary in terms of how I've interacted with other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little bit out of the ordinary with choices made in the movie, in the writing and directing community at large these days.
Yeah, this isn't going to win.
How many times have you?
This is not going to win any awards. Let me tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, by the same token, how many times have you and I mentioned on the odd movie where it comes up and it's not this way? Most Hollywood movies suck at portraying relationships between men, and I don't mean romantic relationships. I mean, how many directors out there right now? I can honestly think of like one off the top of my head who does a really good job at portraying how men interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Antoine Fuqua, for the record, who has done some. He did that terrible. I shouldn't say terrible. The not very good King Arthur movie starring Clive Owen. He did Tears of the Sun, the Magnificent Seven remake with Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington. Because I know we had this conversation about that movie in particular. Because there's these great scenes of all the characters kind of sitting around bonding, and we both just kind of went, "Wow, there is not enough of this in movies."
Yeah, well, I mean, the trend in movies right now is that men, white men especially, are the worst things ever and should not be portrayed in any way but the worst way possible. So, unless you're a Marvel hero.
And even then.
Yeah. Anyway, my final point on this, and I'll give you the last word. You can say what you need to say, and we'll move on. it asks nothing of the audience except to have a good time. It says nothing about the world except that isn't it fun to watch, to watch guys shoot each other. It's a very simple mystery. It's just shot and executed very stylistically and very artistically for this medium. So it's an average to good movie. You might even say it's better than good if you're really into this sort of thing. For my taste, for my preferences, I like The Gentleman a little bit more. But
I could make a joke about why you like The Gentleman more, but I won't.
I'll say it myself. This was missing a foppish gay character calling everyone my love.
You wanted Hugh Grant?
I needed Hugh Grant to just randomly walk into a saying, "Hello, my love." I needed him lightly hitting on Jason Statham, and Jason Statham looking uncomfortably tense. Like, ugh, just stop, Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant leaving a trail of slime around Jason Statham. That's what we needed. But in light of that, it's a very manly, macho type movie, and I can guarantee you, without even having read any of these yet, that's going to be a lot. That I said macho, and what you're going to hear is toxic from the reviewers. So that's it. Go see it if you're into this sort of thing, or skip it. This isn't one of those where I would say you got to go see this thing. Oh my god. This isn't Watchmen, the show, not the movie. Or something like The Wire.
I still haven't seen the Watchmen television show, actually, now that I think about it.
This isn't one of those things where, like, oh my god, you have to go see this thing. I mean, if you like Guy Ritchie and if you like Jason Statham, go see it. It's there are worse ways to spend an evening. If you don't, you're not missing anything if you don't see it. Your word, sir.
This is largely my personal taste. I actually liked that there was not a hero. We're not following a good guy.
No.
We're following a very violent man as he goes on a quest to do violent things in some vain attempt to assuage his guilt over and loss at the death of his son.
I think also he was dealing with his wife looking poorly upon him. Like, you as a man have failed, and him not being able to... that not sitting well with him.
Yeah, I imagine that was a bit of it, too. I liked Statham's performance here for a very specific reason. It's understated, but it's also very readable. The times when his character is just shut down, like, okay, I'm here, I am passing time while I gather information, it's very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But the times when he is more engaged in what's going on, that's also obvious. He's not overacting any of this,
mm-hmm.
but everything that's going on with that character is right below the surface, and but it's there to be seen if you're paying a little bit of enough attention. I like that. Again, I like that he's not a hero. I don't object to movies with heroes. I love movies with heroes. God, who doesn't? I also don't mind on occasion turning that on its head and following someone like Jason Statham's character here. It's interesting. Or this was not one of my my following point needs an appropriate premise. This movie scratched an itch for me. I came out of this movie and was thoroughly satisfied. And it took me a little bit to realize why. The violent crime, revenge, mystery, action kind of movie that this is, that's a genre that I have enjoyed. It's also a genre that over the last handful of months has been damaged for me. Because we watched and we reviewed Too Old to Die Young, which falls into the same basic genre. And then Vanquished, which also falls into the same basic genre. And both of those are... I don't quite know... Look, Mark, Jesse, and I had a 3-hour therapy session about Too Old to Die Young. My complaint about Too Old to Die Young was not that there's no hero. I actually liked that there wasn't, that Miles Teller was kind of a bag of shit. But my issues with that were otherwise. But the fact that there's no hero or no heroic turn at the end, I kind of dug that as a artistic choice. I dug that Jason Statham is an unrepentant, violent crime lord. That, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure why that resonated with me in this instance, but I kind of dug it. It worked.
Can I venture a guess?
Sure.
I'm going to use my therapeutic talents to sort of open up your mind here.
Oh,
and
be careful.
lay it bare to the world. I think because we've done such a deep dive into so many pop culture popcorn movies, anytime something goes against the grain and shows kind of a darker underbelly and takes some chances with the medium, you're going to be more drawn to it than you might have normally had you not had a steady diet of candy over the past.
Let's not get into how long.
I'm like, carry the 4. Gosh, it's been a while.
Hang on, that's probably, dude, we've been doing this for, what, 6 years at this point, give or take?
When did, Jeff and I did it in 2020. I just posted all these. Jeff and I did it in 2013, so, and then you and I and Pat started, and then Pat went away, and it was just me and you when Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out. So, here, you go ahead and make your statement, and I'm going to pull up the year real quick.
Okay. For the record, I think you're partially correct. I've almost
2014.
Okay, so yeah,
7 years.
7 years.
Ugh.
We have nothing to show for our time invested.
7 years of circling the same drain. In fact, we've sunk lower.
Well, when you're circling the drain, we are going towards it, just very slowly. I think you're correct. I've largely always been someone who's drawn to stuff that is, again, a bit more experimental is the wrong word, and mostly because it has a very different connotation when it comes to film.
You tend to be. I don't want to use the word snob because that has a negative connotation to it, and I'm not trying to pick a fight with you. But you do have like a weirdly choosy palette. You know, you're. I'm going to use some very vague general words here.
Yeah, sure.
But just bear with me. You're the kind of person who kind of like walks through the orchard and you're like, only the best fruit. I only want the best fruit. Now, the best can be defined by what you think the best is. And so if it's like the best porn, you know, sure, porn's not great, but you've decided in your brain, I will only watch the best porn, the best of the best. And the rest of it I will do away with. And I will not acknowledge even exists. And that's kind of at least my observation. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm curious why you went to porn.
To illustrate a point?
I'm just saying, even look, you're not I don't think you're entirely wrong, and you're somewhat correct. I have long since given up the notion that everything I like is the best because I like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a very somewhat specific sense of what I like and what I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And even in stuff that I like that I know is, not of the highest caliber, I know why I can generally find why I like it and articulate that. I've always kind of been drawn to stuff that's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit, again, willing to do interesting stuff. Believe it or not, that's one of the best things about the first Iron Man movie. I'm not to harp on the MCU too much, but the first Iron Man movie is a wild departure from the vast majority of superhero cinema at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a giant risk. It's not an unknown, but a lesser-known comic property. And they take it and they very much go towards the bizarre hybrid of realistic science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it works. That's kind of what drew me to that, I think. and again, then it kind of became its own thing. And again, I'm not here to harp on the MCU. I enjoy a lot of their movies, so this is not me looking down my nose at them by any stretch of the imagination.
But you do, to go back to my orchard, I promise I won't bring up porn again. Not at least in the next 5 minutes. But I do have this vision of you kind of walking through an orchard, and you're plucking a fruit, and you're going, there's a dent over the shoulder. You pluck another fruit, like, and you're just very examining of things, and you're like,
that's, I'm an extraordinarily critical person. That's very true.
This is the most exceptional fruit on this tree, and I will take this one and then burn the tree down.
I would not burn the tree down. I might never return to the tree. But
walking out and like, don't go into that forest. Nothing good is there. I have taken the best fruit and left nothing. And it's like full of fruit everywhere, and people are like, what the fuck is he talking about? But it's not the best. It's not what you thought was the best thing.
I appreciate your visual image of me. And I think it comes from being, again, when I say I'm critical, I try very hard not to be the overly negative critical. Mm-hmm. I tend to think of it more as, like, again, critical in the purely like examination sense of things.
So I think Wrath of Man, because it's so against the grain and it's so not the typical thing Hollywood's putting out right now in mainstream culture. You can find stuff like Wrath of Man anywhere if you look hard enough for it, especially with the long tail of streaming. But in terms of... When you think about what May 7th signifies, it's the start of the summer blockbuster season. We're supposed to be getting Black Widow and Fast and the Furious and Top Gun and Mission Impossible.
Stop. You're depressing me.
And Cruella, and
Why?
The Purge.
Why are all of those? Stop.
And Space Jam. And instead, we got this really...
Boy, Space Jam is going to tank.
Well, it's also a shared thing, and that'll be a conversation for July. But anyway, my point being, I think for you, this is so much against everything this moment in time kind of stands for and tends to produce. It was like, oh, thank God, my summer isn't starting off with a signification of dumbery. I'm getting something I can actually enjoy.
I think it does also help that this was a good iteration of this kind of movie when we've publicly had to talk about some that were...
that may have missed the mark a twidge?
Just a bit. Depending on which of those two properties we're talking about, some more than others in different places.
And you weren't even on the On Trial where Sean and I talked about Only God Forgives, which my favorite part of that entire podcast is Sean and I, heartily laughing at the idea that we may have ruined The Notebook for everyone forever.
You know what? I hope you did. You mentioned you can find stuff like this in a lot of places, and I think that's true. This movie, if you're interested in this movie, there's a few others that kind of sprung to my mind. One of these is it was a Netflix movie starring Chadwick Boseman called Message from the King, which is very similar to this. This movie reminded me a lot of Heat. And I mean that in a very, very good way. I suppose I should talk about some of the specifics about this movie, not just some of the generalities. The gunplay sequences in this movie are wonderful. They're not stylized. They're very tense. They're very grounded. Even the part where Jason Statham just kind of Terminator walks at people shooting at him and they can't hit him. Mm-hmm. That's a lot truer to life than you might think. People who have not trained to fire consistently will miss a lot. People who have not trained to fire consistently under pressure hit a lot less. And suddenly, 3 of your friends are dead, and here's this menacing bald man who's one-shot everybody else in this group charging you down, and you're half running and trying to shoot at him. Yeah, you're probably going to miss. I really liked the entire heist scene in the depot. Mm-hmm. That was incredibly well shot. It was incredibly well... It's not... Partially because it's not just what you think it is. They do a lot of moving around in the space. They do a lot of fun stuff with camera angles. The action starts and stops. There's a gunfight, then it stops because one side wins, and then somebody else shows up, and there's a little bit of a stealth element to it. The least realistic thing that goes on there is how much damage those ballistic suits and helmets can endure.
Mm-hmm.
They don't quite do that. When it comes to small arms fire from like handguns, yes, they're just kind of standing there tanking some pretty hefty firepower at certain points. And I just part of my brain just had to go, that doesn't work like that. Couldn't help it. But the movie's good enough overall that I was certainly willing to forgive and go along with it. Again, Jason Statham's performance is very good. Scott Eastwood is a very good actor. He doesn't have a tremendous amount to do here, but he's a wonderful bag of dicks when he has to be.
Mm-hmm.
All the supporting cast is great. Jeffrey Donovan, who if you're one of the people who watched the Burn Notice series, you know how good he can be. So he does a really good job. The characters are kind of typical Ritchie characters in the sense that they're a little bit, kind of stylized characters, but nobody feels out of place. Which is to the credit of the writing and the direction. I'm going to set you up for your ad read, Mark. Okay? You ready?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I unabashedly love the score to this movie.
That was what I was going to ask you.
I love how ominous it feels. I love the use of not just the use of strings, but of deep resonant tones. It's very much evocative of certain works of Hans Zimmer. I genuinely loved the soundtrack to this movie. And Mark, is there a place we can find that?
Yes, there is. I'm so glad you asked. The Wrath of Man soundtrack is actually available on AmazonMusic.com. And if you would like to check it out for free, you should click the link in the description of this podcast. It says getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork. That's getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork. And you'll get a free 30 days of Amazon Music. You can stream the Wrath of Man soundtrack, or you can stream Anna Menaguchi, or Fits and Starts, or Howard the Duck. All the music that we've been talking about. Dr. Feelgood, Weezer.
I'm sorry. Howard the Duck?
Yes. Earlier today, I opened up the Source Material Live Deadpool the Duck with the Howard the Duck theme from the end of the Howard the Duck movie.
Okay.
Call him Howard the Duck. There's no way to conceal it.
Just stop.
Anyway, if you're not really into me singing it, but you want to hear Leah Thompson sing that song, or you want to hear just about anything your heart desires, go ahead and click our link at getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork to get a free 30 days of Amazon Music on us. All right, are we just about done?
Yeah, I think that's about everything I wanted to say. Again, I enjoyed this. If you like this style of movie, you will enjoy this movie. I think Mark's largely correct in that it is a purely entertainment-driven film. It doesn't ask a tremendous amount of questions about the human condition, but you can find a little bit of it if you look in this film. It's not pure popcorn, but it's also not at all heavy fare when it comes to themes and thinking. It's heavy when it comes to, boy, he sure did shoot the crap out of those those purveyors of pedophilic pornography, didn't he? And yes, he did. He shot a bunch of them.
He sure did shoot those sex perverts. All right, let's move on to the money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
Alrighty, this thing had a budget of, it does not say, but it made $26.6 million as of this writing, according to the wiki. It was the #1 movie of the weekend, which we said it was, both of us. I said it. I think you agreed. It was going to be the conversation was last week, oh my God, Demon Slayer was the #1 movie of the weekend. Mortal Kombat only was #1 once. And I said, okay, but there's no competition. There's going to be competition May 7th. And you were like, but what if? And I'm like, no, it's a mainstream, wide release movie with a known entity in it. It's not going to lose in the third week of an anime's release. And it didn't.
I think what I wound up talking about a little bit more, and I may not have brought this up on the show, but I did think about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was more curious about how Demon Slayer and Mortal Kombat would relate to each other. Because, again, when we thought about it and kind of talked it out, yeah, Wrath of Man was going to get the top spot here.
Mm-hmm.
But, how's Mortal Kombat going to do in its third week? And it turns out that after falling, 75% after its first, it fell another 68 in the third,
mm-hmm.
which is
weirdly though set up
horrible.
for a sequel. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're happy with its, with how it did given the set of circumstances. And we'll be here all night if we rehash the literal same conversation we've been having for a year now. But, know that Mortal Kombat's in a weird, just like anything else, is in some a weird situation. And so they might be taking that into account when they're looking at box office. And that being said, they might be happy with its performance regardless. So, from what I've read, we're getting another Mortal Kombat movie with this cast.
Almost certainly, even though no one wants it. I think that, look, here's the other thing about contemporary movies, and I think this needs to be acknowledged. Almost everything is built with the idea of how can we franchise this crap
Sure.
in mind. So I think they were perfectly willing to take anything short of catastrophic failure and go, yeah, let's make another one. Because, hey, we need to make umpteen more of these things.
So
whatever else can be said about the first the Mortal Kombat movie, it was not a catastrophic failure. It may not have met expectations, but I don't think it they didn't have to really hit the panic button, or they chose not to when they could reasonably have, for whatever reason.
So Wrath of Man debuted at #1, and again, MGM/United Artists got the benefit from that. Demon Slayer remained #2 for its went to #2. Mortal Kombat went from 2 to 3. Godzilla 3 to 4. Ray and the Last Dragon stayed at #5. Separation dropped from 4 to 6. Here Today debuted at #7. That's from Stage 6 Films. Nobody dropped from 6 to 8. The Unholy 7 to 9. Tom and Jerry 9 to 10. Rounding up the top 20, 4 Good Days, which remained at #11. The Waterman debuted at #12. The Croods remained at #13. Together dropped from 10 to 14. The Girl Who Believes in Miracles dropped 12 to 15. Scott Pilgrim, the 10th anniversary re-release, which was pretty high initially, has dropped considerably. Went from 8 to 16.
Good. Screw that movie.
Okay. Minari stayed at 17. The Courier dropped 14 to 18. Gunda 19. And Impasse 20. There were a whole bunch of other small releases that came out. Walking with Herb debuted at #24. The Paper Tigers #25. Mission Stories 29. Mainstream 31. Equal Standard 33. The Human Factor 34. State Funeral 39. Paper Spiders 41. And finally, The Unthinkable debuted at #46, which grossed domestically $655. Oh boy.
Look, the box office might be on its way back, but it's still under medical observation. Like, we're not discharging it from the hospital yet.
Worldwide, here's where we stand. Hi Mom, Detective China, Godzilla still in the top 3. Writer's Odyssey 4, Sister 5, Impasse 6, My Love 7, and now a movie you may have actually heard of. Tom and Jerry is in the top 10 worldwide, and #8 with 110 million. It did 66 foreign and 44 domestic, so good for Tom and Jerry, despite it being a split release on HBO Max. Raya and the Last Dragon, also a split release, but with the $30 premiere price tag. Currently sits at $105. I'm wondering if like the people at Disney are grousing about Raya's performance compared to Tom and Jerry. Just like, man, what the hell?
No. And I guarantee you they're not, for a fairly specific reason.
Okay.
All that sweet, pure profit premier access money.
Yeah, I suppose.
Look. What Tom and Jerry only made from HBO Max, whatever Warner Brothers HBO paid them to host it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that saw that on Disney Plus opening bit, they paid an extra $30, all of which went straight to Disney.
And then Endgame is at number 10. Mortal Kombat currently sits at number 13 in the world at $72 million. The Little Things at number 24 at $29 million. Wrath of Man 27 with $26 million. The Unholy 24 at $28 million. 28 at $24 million rather.
Which is it? 28 at 24 or 24 at 28?
It's number 28 currently with $24 million. Woo!
I just wanted to do that. On first again?
What? No, he's on second.
He's on second.
And that's really it. No other really like alarming things here in the worldwide grosses. This week coming up, the big release is Spiral, which is a Saw spinoff with Chris Rock. Everything else is in limited release, except for Those Who Wish Me Dead, but that's a split release on HBO Max.
I just mentioned I regret that we never talked about reviewing that, did we?
Again, Andrew brought it up, but it's not. It's a standalone, no IP action drama thriller, and it was going up against Spiral. Plus, we had other stuff going on, so
yeah,
no, I didn't think about it, but I didn't see a reason to do it anyway.
Well, okay, and let me, with the understanding that we're doing Spiral and I'm not complaining.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had looked at the specifics of Those Who Wish Me Dead sooner, I might have. I don't know. I don't know that we would have done it. We're doing a lot this month.
Mm-hmm.
More so than usual.
Mm-hmm.
I might have just kind of at least seen if I could get somebody else potentially interested. Mostly because of the writer and director. That movie is written and directed by Tyler Sheridan, who has done some of my favorite work of the last handful of years. He co-wrote Sicario. He wrote and directed both Hell or High Water and Wind River. He co-created the Paramount series Yellowstone, which is quite good. And he does a lot of stuff that's ironically kind of in the same vein as this movie.
Do you want to trade this for Women in? I can do an even swap for Women in the Window if you don't want to do that one.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay with doing Women in the Window.
Okay.
This is not a please rearrange the schedule for me.
Okay.
This is just me bringing up another thing. If you liked this movie, again, I like Sheridan's work, so consider it a bonus recommendation, an endorsement from me to you, the audience.
In any case, Wrath of Man's not going to be number one this weekend. It's going to end up being Spiral, though there are some other wide releases. There's Finding You, which is a drama romance. There's Profile, which is, we talked about that when we reviewed Demon Slayer, because hey, there I am sitting with my children, and this fucking thriller shot on Skype gets advertised. Though it seems like it's been getting more play in various places. Like I've seen on A&E at the very least, and some other places I've been watching TV. I've seen commercials for it.
I finally saw the trailer for that.
Mm-hmm.
You can miss me with that.
And that's it. Those are the wide releases. Again, there's a whole bunch of other limited release stuff. I'm not reading these, but there's Those Who Wish Me Dead, which is split with HBO Max. There's Finding You, Profile, and Spiral, and then a bunch of other limited stuff. And then There's a 25th anniversary showing of Mission Impossible that might be in select theaters.
That made me feel so old when I saw that.
They're also
I remember when that came out. I was living in Oregon at the time.
In the run-up to Fast 9, they've been replaying all the Fast and the Furious movies in theaters for one weekend only. So Friday night, after I go see Spiral, I'm going to walk right back into the theater again with my kids, and I'm taking them to go see Tokyo Drift.
Of all the Fast and the Furious movies you could choose to subject your poor children to, you choose that one.
That's the one we're up to.
If you want to hear more about that, we will be re-releasing the Long Road to Ruin episodes that Sean Comer and I did on that franchise.
Mm-hmm. And it's looking like Spiral may end up being the number one movie at least two weeks in a row, because there's nothing May 21st. It's all limited releases. The big release on May 21st is a Netflix release, which you might actually be able to see in select theaters, which is Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead is actually releasing in theaters before it releases on Netflix. It will be out in theaters, I think this Friday.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. So yeah, if you want to go...
It releases in theaters on the 14th, and then we'll next week will be free on Netflix, so you can kind of choose whether you want to, which version, whether you want to wait for it to be free on Netflix or go see it in theaters. Your choice.
And that's been happening. That's been a trend with theaters right now, is to show Netflix and Hulu movies to kind of get some niche audience, some boutique audience stuff going.
That's all it took to make the street. Turns out all it took to make the theaters and the streaming services work together was a pandemic.
Yeah, millions of people dying.
Millions of people die all the time anyway.
But the next major competition will be May 28th. The two big releases that weekend are A Quiet Place 2 from Paramount and Cruella from Disney, and that'll be split with Disney Plus, Premier Disney Plus. So I would imagine A Quiet Place 2 will end up being the number one movie of the weekend. If not, it'll be Cruella. Either way, Wrath of Man had its moment in the sun. It's fine. Enjoy it. It'll be over this Friday when Spiral comes out. And that's it. That's it for the money. So let us move on to our critical review.
Oh.
Are you ready? I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Critical Review is brought to you by Grammarly. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2M Network. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2M Network to download Grammarly for free. Alrighty. Ruth Maramis, a Flix Chatter film blog.
That publication sounds like it has a sterling reputation.
Hell hath no fury, like Jason Statham scorned, but Guy Ritchie's latest actioner moves along at such a sluggish pace. It's way more somber than it needs to be, overstayed its welcome midway through, and grows more predictable as the movie progresses.
You are just the most impatient kind of theater goer, of film viewer, aren't you? Mark, did this movie bore you at any point?
Nope, I was into it.
And not to be demeaning of you or your personal tastes, I say that.
All right, folks, is he going to do the I react to rattling keys bit, or is he going to reference my love of Michael Bay? Which is he going to do? Choose your own adventure.
But if something can hold your attention like this, and you who have at times professed your enjoyment of actual movies like The Deer Hunter, if you can actually follow this, and it didn't and it didn't bore you at any point, I don't know what this person's problem is.
You want to be there.
And hang on. Oh, it's predictable. Lady, I suffered through Refn's experiment. I got to see the hero violently decapitated with 4 episodes left. I don't need it. I don't need you lecturing me about predictability in film.
Alan Zilberman of Spectrum Culture. Maybe Richie wanted to make a Michael Mann movie, but learned all the wrong lessons.
How did you... That doesn't actually make sense.
Is it Michael Mann Heat?
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
Made a lot of other worse movies, too. The Taking of Pelham 123 remake, that god-awful Miami Vice movie starring Jamie Foxx and Colin Farrell.
That sounds like a fun, good time.
Mark, hang on. Here's the thing about when you say stuff like that. You said that you have a desire to watch M. Night Shyamalan's Avatar: The Last Airbender movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm never sure if you're joking to try and poke at me, or you're genuine and don't understand the pain you are going to put yourself through.
You know, sometimes, look, I believe it was Michael Caine who said some men just want to watch the world burn.
True.
Sometimes I just need to watch a terrible movie to see just how bad it really is. Like, what? How far can we set film back? Ooh, that far. Ooh, okay. Because, okay, so there's you, and there's you sort of, skipping through the woods, picking only the finest fruit, and coming out of the woods and yelling to people who are approaching the orchard, don't go in there, there's no fruit to be had, and everyone's looking at you strangely like there's plenty of fruit, what's he talking about? Then there's me. And I'm in the woods next door, where all the trees are dead. And all the fruit has died and is rotting on the ground. And I'm like, surely there's going to be one in here that's still edible. I can at least, carve a piece off and say, well, this part's still good. That's me. I'm looking for edible fruit amongst the rot.
I want you to understand me when I tell you the following, if we're going to stick with this analogy.
Okay.
This is not me looking at... I have not picked of the finest fruits, and have now stumbled across you looking for mushrooms growing in feces. That is not what we're doing here. This is me having been... I have eaten of the poisoned fruit. I have been violently ill, on my deathbed, dragged myself up from the depths of misery, covered in my own filth, and I see you walking up to this same bush. And I say, in slow motion, no! That's what's going on here.
Fair enough. Patrick McDonald of HollywoodChicago.com. Guy Ritchie filming Frenzy. Check. Lots of casual gunplay. Check. Jason Statham low talk. Check. The complex plot turns out predictable, which is the weakness. Statham!
Again, I fail to understand why the notion that total predictability is a bad thing. And I've complained about predictability in the past at times, and I will again in the future. But it's not always the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
Second, you don't understand what casual gunplay is, sir. There's casual filming of gunplay, but there's not a whole lot casual about what goes on here. Especially the final sequence. Look, Jason Statham might casually shoot down a few robbers at various underworld officials. That might be casual. The firing of automatic weapons in an enclosed space, while people are covered in body armor trying to rob this place of $160 million. No, That's not casual gunplay. That's really good gunplay, in point of fact. And
James-
really, Morrow, hey, just last thing. What about this plot is convoluted? Like,
Yeah.
I will grant you because this is a mystery story, until you get to bits of the mystery, it does meander, but that's not convoluted or overly complicated. There's a heist plan that goes wrong. It's not complicated.
James Bertinelli of Real View's top critic. All of the ingredients seem to be in place for a rollicking, violent time, but the elements don't gel.
Yeah, I completely disagree with that assessment of this movie. Unless you know what would have made it better for this guy, I assume, if instead of the great orchestral score, if we had some Led Zeppelin spewing in the background, maybe. This rampage sequence needs Immigrant Song.
I don't know if people listening to this know this or not, but Robert really hates Thor Ragnarok.
I really do. It's not healthy how much I hate that movie. But I bring that up for a specific reason in this context. Because you just said, because this critic just made a very specific point, and I'm not sure what else might have helped. Again, I feel like this guy had a different idea of what would be fun, and boy, can't everything just have rock and roll set to it all the time. And no, moron, not everything calls for that.
Sarah Michelle Fetters of MovieFreak.com, top critic. Another one who didn't understand the movie she was watching. Things get so convoluted. If you told me the cast and crew were making up new plot elements as shooting went along, I'd be tempted to believe it.
I genuinely don't know what's convoluted about this. You know what, Mark? I occasionally get on you about your inability to follow nonlinear storytelling or your dislike of non-traditional narrative structure. Mostly because I can, and it amuses me to do so. But if this is the state of critical analysis and these brain-dead jamokes are the ones who can't follow what's going on, maybe I should be more angry at them.
I think that would be helpful. Roxana Haddadi of Pajaba, excuse me, top critic. Wrath of Man is all body counts in the house, body count. Wrath of Man is all body count, and its self-seriousness is exhausting. This isn't Richie's Heat. It's his The Tax Collector.
No. What? Again. Oh, it's so serious. Why couldn't we have levity? Where's the Baby Driver soundtrack? No, get bent. Not everything is that shallow. And yeah, this movie's not deep, but it presents itself in a very specific way. And I'm sorry if that doesn't speak to your rapidly misfiring synaptic connections, which have probably been damaged by one too many sessions of autoerotic asphyxiation and lead ingestion. But no, why are these idiots? These are the same idiots who thought that I Care a Lot was the best thing ever because everything was so light and breezy while we're dealing with elder abuse and exploitation. You freaking morons.
Rosalie Kicks of Movie John. This is a simple plot with a terrible execution.
No. This is not badly executed. Again, the plot is not deep. It is fairly straightforward. But I really don't get where you think there was some kind of giant misstep here in the filming. What is it with these people? I don't have a hero to cheer for. I don't know what to do with myself.
You'll love this one then. Blige Ebery of New York Magazine / Vulture, top critic. The writing in Wrath of Man isn't just bad. It's your coworker signed up for a weekend drama workshop bad.
No. Oh God. Why? Who pays this person? And stop.
Kurt Loder. You're watching MTV. Reason Online. But the John Wick pictures have a sense of humor. They have personality. Guy Ritchie doesn't make that kind of movie. Wait, this gets better. Josh Larson of Larson on Film. Hang on. Do both. Josh Larson of Larson on Film. Juvenile stuff that gets unnecessarily dark.
Okay, to the first moron. Rewatch the first John Wick movie and tell me where the humor is, dipshit. Now, I'll grant you personality 100%, and I think if there is a fair criticism in there, then that might be the one that, again, I disagree with it, but I can see where people may not have been paying enough attention to really kind of get some of the understated stuff that goes on.
So this movie really confused people. Like,
How are people this stupid?
You and I got it pretty simply, and there is some stuff where I have to kind of ask you, like, wait, what happened here? Like, I don't get it. Like, but this was fairly straightforward. But Perry Nemiroff, top critic, Wrath of Man's promising start devolves into hollow violence largely due to its convoluted story structure that doesn't amount to much.
There's big title cards giving you the timeline, man. I can't help these people, Mark. They can't be helped. There's nothing for it. We really should just burn down and start over.
David Ehrlich of IndieWire, top critic. The ultimate sin of Wrath of Man is that it doesn't realize it's really a story about pride.
That has to be some dumb attempt at humor based around the 7 deadly sins, right? You, sir, cannot possibly have come away from this story and thought, they should have called it Pride of Man instead of Wrath of Man. That there's just no way that's what happened. You can't be that dense. And yet, here we are. With you, the dense one.
Last one.
Got your own gravitational pull set up there yet, buddy?
Last one. Kane Noble Davies of Filminic in Australia. Wrath of Meh, more like.
Proud of that, buddy? Feel good about yourself?
All right, that does it for our review of...
You really shouldn't.
That does it for our review of Wrath of Man. Earlier today, Evan Bevins and I talked Deadpool the Duck. Last night, Benjamin Cologne... Yeah? Hello?
Deadpool sucks. Can we just say that out loud?
Okay.
Deadpool sucks.
Last night, myself, Alexis Hana, and Ben Cologne talked Truth, Red, White, and Black. It was a very long show, but we talked a lot about... we talked a lot about race in America and the history of the black experience, and I read off a litany of books that I've read back when I was reading nonfiction and doing deep dives into things, like Edwin Black. Back when I was educated, like Edwin Black's War Against the Weak, or Beyond the Bitter Waters, the story of racial cleansing in America, things like that. Ben Cologne shared a lot of personal stuff on the show, and Alexis Hana yelled at Trump supporters. So that's a fun show.
Sounds like it's about par for the course.
Yeah. But we had a good time, and we even got we did in fact talk about the comic and all of that. So a good time was had by all. And in case you're wondering, if you don't listen to the comic stuff, Truth, Red, White, and Black is what Isaiah Bradley from Falcon and the Winter Soldier was based on. Myself, Chris Bailey, and Pat Mullen did our deep dive into WrestleMania 2. That's titled The Mania of WrestleMania 2. We looked at the day after WrestleMania, the advent of Saturday night's main event, the formation of the Hogan Monster Machine as led by Bobby Heenan. Talked about Savage. We talked about a lot of new talent coming into the company in the year interim between Mania and WrestleMania 2. And we were largely very positive on this.
The crying shame we never got an Adrian Adonis and Shawn Michaels match.
I absolutely gushed over Adrian Adonis versus Uncle Elmer. Boy, was that my kind of match. So go ahead and give that a listen. It was that was another long conversation, but it was one that needed to be had. Tomorrow is the Super Blog team up. We have 2 entries. We have Long Road to Ruin, Dr. Dolittle. It's the 2 Eddie Murphy movies from 98 and 2001. Plus, Jesse and I also did a review of Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood. So those will be releasing on May 12th. And then in the evening, myself, Jesse Starcher, and probably Sean Comer will be reviewing Weezer Van Weezer. And as I've been saying all week on Thursday, a bunch of us are getting together to finally talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There'll be a dozen of us saying how much we love the show and how great it is. And Robert Winfree will be leading from a list of 1,000,000 grievances, telling us how stupid we all are.
Grievance number 9,324.
Armbar.
No, I couldn't. I had a different gag I was going to go for. I was going to go for Grandpa Simpson writing that letter to the editor. Here's a list of words I never want to see in print again.
Okay, well, if you can remember for tomorrow, you should do that bit. On May 14th, because Jigsaw will be in theaters, as we've said before, we'll be re-releasing Sean and Robert reviewing the Saw franchises. That was broken up into 2 different podcasts, and we'll be releasing both of those. Robert and I will be reviewing Woman in the Window from Netflix, and we have a new guy we're trying out here on the network. I met him through a variety of podcasting groups. He kind of sought me out. He actually sought me out because of the comic book stuff that we do. And I was like, I have 90 people doing comic book stuff. What I don't have is someone to review the new Anna Kendrick sci-fi movie, Stowaway. He was like, well, I'll do that. And I'm like, great. So,
it's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm interested in it, and just nobody had any. I at this point, I'm not trying to, like, I'm telling you guys stuff is out there, but I'm not necessarily pitching things anymore because we have plenty. So if somebody wants to do something, like if Alexis brings something to my attention she wants to do, that's fine. If you bring something you want to do, that's fine. If there's something that gets announced that I think we should do, I'll mention it. But, stuff like Stowaway where it doesn't really make a difference, it's just something I might want to talk about, I don't even ask anymore. But he wanted to come on and try his hand at being a part of the Rattle Legend Broadcasting family, so I'm going to bring him on to talk about Stowaway. On Saturday is Jesse syndicated source material, What If the Alien Costume Had Possessed Spider-Man? And then we are slowly but surely re-airing a bunch of TV parties from the Blog Talk Radio days, stuff that just never made it onto the W2M network feed. So for the next couple of weeks, we've already started with Jessica Jones. This coming Sunday is Daredevil Season 2, and the following Sunday after that is Luke Cage Season 1. And like I said, over the course of the next few months, we're going to re-air as much of the archive as we can, along with what we've been doing on Flashback Fridays and Long Road to Ruins and whatnot. And eventually, you'll even start to hear Rob's 3 or 4 year podcast he used to do pretty regularly on Friday nights. Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. So there's shit tons of content coming your way from between 2013 and 2017. That's it. My tongue hurts. I'm tired of talking. Do your plugs and let's get out of here.
A lot of stuff this month.
Don't do the stuff I already said.
I know. Let's see. Yesterday, I covered WWE Raw in a pinch-hitting situation. And boy, is that
Has your soul recovered?
No. No, it has not. That show is lifeless. If I might dust off an old chestnut, it is as soft as Liberace at the Playboy Mansion. Just nothing. Nothing going on. So you can find my review of that in the Wrestling Zone of 411mania.com, along with my review of AEW's Dark Elevation, which is their web show that they air Monday nights, which is one of my regular weekly gigs. Let's see. Wednesday, whatever MLW is releasing, I'll be covering, assuming they release anything. Friday, WWE SmackDown, which is another regular gig for me. At least they don't have Jinder Mahal on SmackDown, so I can take solid. They have Corbin, though. Can't they put those two suck magnets on the same show and just get it over with? Anyway, I'll be covering. So, SmackDown is not the worst wrestling show in the world and has maybe the best thing in professional wrestling on it. That being Roman Reigns at the moment. So, I will be covering that. Saturday, UFC 262, the vacant UFC lightweight title will be contested between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. I will be covering that in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Mark mentioned a bunch of stuff. I'm going to be on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier review. I will be dying on that hill, sad, cold, lonely, and depressed. I'm 90% sure of that. But I have died on many a hill before and will in the future as well, I'm sure. Again, Woman in the Window coming up. Yeah, a lot of stuff. Spiral, we'll be doing A Quiet Place. I will be a guest on the Metal Hammer of Doom when we review the Jonathan Young original album Starship Velociraptor in a couple of weeks, which I'm looking forward to talking about because, hey, why not? So, yeah, I got stuff pretty much every week. Jupiter's Legacy coming up later in the month. Yeah, stuff. Non-trivial chance that I will have to pinch hit on talking about Invincible, the Amazon series, after Jesse falls out, because that's the way life goes.
It's Ronnie. He's the one scheduled for that.
Oh, Ronnie. And there's a really non-trivial chance I'm going to I better get on watching that.
We also have Castlevania.
Castlevania Season 4, after Season 3, man.
Mm.
You know, yet another bit where I'm convinced you and I are like the only sane people in the world. Castlevania Season 3 is horribly well reviewed.
Oh, are you kidding me? God, it was awful.
It's sitting at like north of 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ugh. So let's be clear about this, okay? It was 67 on Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score. It was 91 audience score, by the way, which tells you all you need to know. But it's 67 from the audience score. But Castlevania scored higher. Critics are dumb. Our dumb culture. You got me saying that now.
It is our dumb... Look, that's why we do the critical review, because these morons deserve to be called out on their stupidity. You are not hiding behind any sort of veil of supremacy. In fact, always remember, and I know this is almost equally as true of me saying this of you, but critics, you offer nothing. The most useless piece of junk ever created or words put to paper is of infinitely more value than the critic's words decrying it as such. Don't forget that. You self-righteous, self-involved bunch of jackasses.
We good?
Sure.
All right, folks, that's our review of Wrath of Man. You self-important jackasses. For Robert Winfree, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.